You guys, we're so chatty. Let's move on to the next one. This has been so good, though. It's been so good. The purpose being here on Earth. What is it?
It's to become our best selves.
Yes. So I'm low-key mortified, like actually mortified by my answer to that question. And I almost just messaged the team that does our social media and was like, will you please take this down? Because I was so embarrassed by my response. But I was like, you know what? This could be a learning opportunity. So on our podcast, I was asked by our guest, like, what is the purpose of life? And my response was, it's to become our best selves, work on ourselves, and find joy, which I believe is true, but we can only do that through Jesus Christ. And I was just thinking, like, obviously, I know that the purpose of being here is to learn more about our Savior and become like Him and be tested and tried and also find joy. But I was just like, why did I answer that way? Like, that's not how I actually think in my heart and feel. And maybe I was like under pressure and we're on camera and it was like out of the blue, whatever. But I was like, you know what? I think that the world and the philosophies of the world and the philosophies of men have really impacted me. It's just so interesting that these phrases that are so popular in the world make so much sense, and you're like, yeah, put yourself first, or like, you only live once, whatever it is, and you're like, yeah, I can get behind that, that makes sense, when really it's very similar to the gospel of Jesus Christ, but it's just like twisted a little bit. It's just so interesting because you don't even, like, I didn't even realize how much these things were impacting me. And I just feel like the worldly, like, phrases and stuff, they're just more selfish. Like, and of course I'm going to be working on myself, and that's one of my purposes here in life. But the point of that is to become more like the Savior so I can serve and act like He did. So this is just a little reminder to myself and to hopefully you guys that we need to be immersing ourselves into the scriptures, into general conference talks, and into the gospel, because the world, while it can have really good philosophies and teachings, obviously, I feel like Satan is so smart into just twisting things a little bit to make things more self-centered when we need to be trying to be more selfless and like the Savior. The purpose being here on Earth.
I loved it. I think for me, one of my biggest, my mom always has to remind me, she says like this saying to me, she says, son, not everything is football. Because growing up, I was obsessed with like competition. Just like the only way to get to something is to go through somebody for it, right? Like that's how life is. You just got to go after it. And I remember watching like Michael Jordan's The Last Dance documentary, and every single episode I cried because I was like, this is great. But then like talking to my therapist, he's like, what do you know about Michael Jordan's like family life? I was like, oh, it's kind of all over the place. He's like, listen, as great as a basketball player and as great as an athlete and the impact he had on the world, is that the kind of man that you want to aspire to be from what you know about him? Like, do you know about his friendships? And I was just like, there's a lot of friendships that he has like cut off because of that competitive fire within him. And then I started to think, I was like, you know what? Maybe the world's way of like, like just the ends justify the means and all that kind of stuff. Like, well, maybe, yeah, to an extent, certain things require certain respect, right? And so as you said in your video, you're just like, like working on yourself is not a bad thing. Loving yourself is not a bad thing. But the source is supposed to be the savior. And the savior requires us to look outwards, which inevitably helps us love ourselves better and helps us serve better and helps us get to our optimal self and our best self and helps us live like we only have one shot at this and makes us better. But it's just a little tweaking that you say. That's what hit me. I was like, oh my gosh, it's like the principles of life that can make you great are also the principles of life that can cause your demise. And so I appreciate you just that reminder to me, like, oh yeah, I might need to just immerse myself a little bit more into the scriptures and kind of make sure I'm weeding out the philosophies of men. So I appreciated that.
Thank you so much. And but like literally it's so hard because we're literally immersed in it every day that we're on
Every day.
social media, that we're in the world, like talking to people. We're surrounded by it. So I feel like we got to give ourselves some grace. But like it's so hard to just have that realization of like, oh my gosh, like this is impacting me more than I thought it was.
Mimi, like I'm just the beginning of your video, like what are you mortified about? I think it
Okay.
was a great
Yeah.
answer. No, I think it was a brilliant answer, to be honest with you. Like, and that's how you know, like, normally the first thought that comes to your head is the right one, right? And what did you say? It's to become our best selves. Technically, you're not wrong
That's what I
because,
was like. Technically,
Yeah.
right? That's what I'm
I don't think
saying.
there's anything wrong, but I
No,
understood what you're
exactly.
saying. But Tao Tai's right. Like you kind of hit it on the point. I mean, the way you go about it, I think, is what could be in question. But the way that you were going about it was through the Savior. So I don't know.
And you admitted that too. Like, that's what, like, in the back of your mind, like,
Uh-huh.
that's what you meant. Like, that's what you wanted to say. You know what I mean? Becoming our best selves, yeah, while we're on this earth. Yeah, that's what we're supposed to be doing. I believe, like, scripturally, like, I don't even know if that's a word, but like, spiritually, we won't become our best selves until what? The second coming. You know what I mean? That's when we will truly be at our best selves. But while we're
Mhm.
here on God's green earth, of course, yeah, we're trying to be our best selves. That's why we follow commandments. That's why we do what we got to do according to our beliefs. So I would honestly, like, of course, this is probably, your best critic. You know what I mean? Like, you're your
Yeah.
hardest critic. So
Uh-huh.
you probably still took a step back and obviously wanted to rethink some things. But I would give you some flowers for your response, because I don't even think you were that far off, to be honest. So
Oh
And I
my
know
gosh,
why you
thank
did it
you.
too. You did it because you already like as content creators, we already know the comments that are gonna come back. So while we're making content, we already know that this is the pushback that's gonna come from it. But I will say, Mimi,
Mhm.
you're pretty spot. When you said mortified, I thought it was like some stuff because I remember when I
yeah.
the first couple times I went viral on TikTok,
Oh.
let's just say that we will not put those on this show. And I was just like, yeah, I don't, our definitions of mortified are a little different, but
Really different.
No, one thing you guys
It,
should know about me, I am so hard on myself. And so I think, and I got some comments like similar to what you're saying, where it's like, okay, you're fine. Like, don't worry. But I think just having been on social media for a few years, it's like, I'm like, if this is the one clip someone gets of me, I want to be testifying of the Savior. And I know it's not possible to do that like 24/7, but it's just not the exact way I wish. If I had time to think about it, that's not how I would have answered. So maybe
sure,
mortified
sure.
was a strong word, but I appreciate you guys for giving me grace.
No, it was good. It was good.